Well, recovery doesn't happen by accident. It takes us engaging in the process, stepping forward with intentionality so that we can find the hope and the healing that we're looking for. And so what does it look like to work our recovery with intentionality, both when we get started on this journey, but how do we maintain that intentionality moving forward?
Recovery can be hard, but it's worth it. There is hope knowing we can find healing one step at a time with Jesus and healthy community. Whether you're struggling with a hurt or a hang-up or a habit, you're not alone. During this podcast, we share real stories, practical tools, and powerful truths that inspire you to keep moving forward. No matter where you are on your journey, there's hope ahead. So stick with us as we walk this path together through Celebrate Recovery.
Well, welcome back to Hope in Recovery, a Fellowship Celebrate Recovery podcast where we talk life change stories and have recovery conversations designed to move us a little bit further down our road of healing and hope as we walk together towards Jesus in this incredible and crazy journey that we call recovery. And we're super glad that you're here with us today. If you've been listening for a long time, thanks for coming back. If you're stumbling across this for the first time, thanks for being here. We're glad you're here. And we also want you to know, like, if you've been listening for a while and you've got ideas on things that you'd like us to discuss or feedback for us at all, please reach out to us. We want to hear from you. cr@fellowshipnwa.org is the place to reach out to. Again, that email address is cr@fellowshipnwa.org. We'd love to hear your feedback. Well, as we jump into today's conversation, a little bit of a disclaimer. If you've been listening for a while, a couple weeks ago, you may have heard me in our episode on barriers to intentionality reference a conversation that Julia and I had. And you may be thinking, what conversation is he talking about? Well, it was intended to be another episode of this podcast, but when we were recording it, the audio got really messed up and we had some technical difficulties, and so we weren't able to release it. And so if you've been looking for that episode, guess what? It's right here. We're running that conversation back, and I'm super excited to have my best friend on here, my wife, my best friend, my partner in recovery, Julia. And we'll have you introduce yourself in just a second, but let me introduce myself. I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. I struggle with anxiety and depression, sexual addiction, and grief. And my name is Andy, and I've got the great privilege of being able to help lead at Celebrate Recovery right here at Fellowship Fayetteville, and super grateful to be a part of the ministry of Celebrate Recovery at Fellowship Bible Church in Northwest Arkansas, and everything that God is doing in and with and through Celebrate Recovery here. And with me today, Julia, would you introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ, and I celebrate recovery over sexual addiction, and I still struggle with lust, body image issues, and love and relationship addiction. And my name is Julia.
Hey, Julia. Hey, Julia, would you tell us how long you've been in recovery? And after you tell us that, what did it look like for you to kind of get plugged into the process of CR?
Yeah, so I've been in recovery, I think, for coming up on 10 years.
Man.
And yeah, it's crazy. So we got in recovery. Well, I got in recovery when I was um, in college, I think. And I started helping out with the student ministry, the Landing, which is Celebrate Recovery Student Ministry. And I was running audio for Andy while he was in charge of the Landing. And so I started being there on Friday nights, and then I jumped in to start leading open share groups after our large group time for the girls. And so it was just really sweet to just jump in and be a part of that. And so that's what got me into Celebrate Recovery. And then shortly after that is when I first joined my first step study with like the adults, women. And so that was really, really sweet time as well.
And that's awesome. Yeah, and I know you've shared your story before on this podcast, but uh, love that you got into Celebrate Recovery kind of through the side door as you started serving with students. And I remember roping you into running sound as we were doing the landing up at Fellowship Rogers Celebrate Recovery. Uh, and you know, initially, and I've heard you talk about this before about how when you jumped into recovery, it was to serve. When did the shift start happening for you deciding, ooh, I think this might be for me? What was going on? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I remember I grew up in church and I loved serving. It was a very comfortable space for me, and so it was really helpful and really fun to be able to lead the small groups for the girls. Um, but then I just kind of got to thinking about my own life and my own recovery, and I had my sexual addiction was still active at that time. I didn't have any
Mm.
sort of sobriety. And so I had like shaky sobriety. Like I was like trying to I view it like the Christian way, where I was just trying to do as best as I could for as long as I could, just thinking like I'm gonna fall back into this at some point. Like I didn't think that true freedom was possible at that time until I got into Celebrate Recovery. Um, but I just realized from serving just how much even like the young girls are like sharing and going there, being vulnerable, and it made me think, yeah, maybe there is freedom from this. I need to tackle this. And so I jumped into my first step study and started trying to figure out, okay, what is this sexual addiction, and why do I run to these things, and just trying to figure out, what all of it is and why I wrestle with that. And so that's whenever I first joined Celebrate Recovery and got kind of sober from my sexual addiction.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you sharing that. As I hear you just talk about that, one of the things that kind of wondering in your struggles, were you bringing anybody else into that, or were you just totally isolated in that? Like, did you have any accountability?
Um, Not really. I had told some people about it, some peers growing up who also struggled. I think there was like there was some relief in that. There was like some shame that was taken out just from talking about it, but there wasn't any tools
Mm.
that I had, or even that my peers had, um to deal with that. I remember even sitting in a car with a friend, I think after I started Celebrate Recovery, and she she kind of opened up to me that she was struggling. And at that point I was able, like, she was like, this is so weird and I'm so sorry, like I just had to tell you this. And I was like, oh girl, this is so common. Like, she was like, what? And she said, I feel so much better just knowing that. And we joined our sip study together. I just remember that. Man, it's been so long. All of these details. And so we both jumped into a step study together
Mm.
um to tackle that. And so that was just a really, really sweet time, and just a gift from the Lord to be able to, I mean, his timing is perfect, and he led me to that point at the right time to be able to get that healing that I needed then, and kind of dig into the roots of what was going on with all of that. So it was just a sweet time.
That's that's so cool. I love that you guys jumped in and did that together. Man, it's interesting hearing you say that jumping in. I had people that kind of knew, but I didn't really have anybody in there. As you jumped into Celebrate Recovery, one of the things that we see as we start our recovery journeys is that recovery, it doesn't happen by accident. It takes us engaging in the process and learning to start actually uh, like just leaning in. and realizing like, oh, there's ways that I partner in this process of change with God. And so, were there any moments or practices of intentionality in your recovery journey, maybe in that first step study, and maybe even just looking back and thinking through, man, what did it look like to start working your recovery like with intention and actually owning it?
Yeah, it's such a good conversation. I love this topic because since I have been in recovery so long now, or like 10 years, that's not long for some, but it's long for others. But since I've been in recovery for 10 years, whether that's long or not, um, I have had enough time to kind of ebb and flow with my intentionality, and I have. And so I think jumping in initially, it was kind of finding my footing with how intentional I wanted to be at that moment, you know. And
Yeah.
we say all the time in recovery, you get out what you put in. And so I think having done so many step studies, now there are some that I was way more committed and way more intentional and did just get so much more out of. I think that first one was so foundational in kind of like getting my feet wet with being vulnerable and what does it look like to go there with this group of women and having them respond, and then um you know then kind of digging in a little bit more into the roots, and then starting counseling on top of my recovery meetings, and digging in even more there. And that happened after I had been in recovery for, I think, like 7 years. And so
Yeah,
um
there's so much gold that you're just throwing out there
okay.
one after another, and so I want to slow you down just a little bit there because you said that phrase, and we say it a lot starting step studies or just jumping into recovery in general, is like you will get out of it what you put in. And you just threw out, I just clocked like three different ingredients of you putting it into your recovery so that you could get out more of the healing that God has for you, so that you're not leaving any of that on the table. I heard vulnerability in there. I heard pursuing some outside additional resources to better understand your recovery. And then I heard something else in there that my memory fails me on it. But let's just start right here. Like, one of the things that you put in was learning to be vulnerable with those women. Did you find that hard?
you know Different topics over the years in recovery have been easier to be vulnerable with and harder to be vulnerable with. And that's true up into like present times. I mean, it seems like each new struggle, each new area that the Lord brings up in my life that I am like stepping out of denial and trying to adjust, there's a new step of vulnerability that I have to take, to go there with the women in my groups, and being able to um, open up about what's going on. I mean, I can think of a bunch of different struggles because after I had gotten some understanding with my sexual addiction, I started working through some codependency, and then working through some disordered eating and body image issues, and recently trying to tackle love and relationship addiction and just trying to figure out what that is. And each of those areas has brought really deep rooted hurts that I have had to work through. And it's really deep, and the deeper that my soul, the deeper parts of my soul that I bring up, the more vulnerable it is. And so the harder it is to go there a lot of times. I heard someone say once that vulnerability, if vulnerability doesn't scare you, it's not vulnerable. Sometimes we can think we're being vulnerable, but are we really? There's an intentionality piece to vulnerability. Because me being a leader for so long, I can lean in and share about tons of things that to some people seem super vulnerable. But I know in my heart, this is a struggle that maybe I've already dealt with. It's not currently what's going on, or anything like that, that can seem, it's not as intentional, as I need to be with what I need right now or what the Lord has for me. And so there's almost some intentionality that I think we can have even in the area of vulnerability within our recovery, just which is so super interesting.
Yeah. Hearing you say that, like, you know, when we think about the definition of intention, it's a predetermination to act in a certain way. Like, that's the definition of that word. And when it comes to vulnerability, there is a reality that the only person that can make me be vulnerable is me. And so I have to choose to let people into those places. Or I can put a mask on. I can even put a mask on acting like I'm being vulnerable with it, which is kind of a scary thought. And so that intention when it comes to our vulnerability is the determination to say, no, I need to say this. I need to bring this up right now. Do you,
Mhm.
does that feel like it tracks with what you're thinking here?
Yeah, I mean, I think too, even recently, just with some of the um trying to tackle some of my love and relationship addiction, and just it's a new area for me. Um, there is a bit of um it takes a lot of vulnerability to go there for me right now. And I know that once I kind of work through and get some, I don't know if you call it sobriety, but get some recovery under my belt in this area, it'll get easier. I remember whenever I was first sharing about my body image issues, which is uniquely uh, scary in a group of women, because a lot of my hurt has come from women and comparing myself to women and being worried that they're gonna judge me. And so that was really uniquely scary to share, and open share. And I remember, and I've shared about this often, but since then, but like I remember, I mean, this was maybe like a year and a half to 2 years ago. So like fairly recently had been in recovery a while. And I was sitting in open share, and I knew at this point, I'm like, I know this is what I need to do. I've been in recovery long enough to know like I need to share about this. I have to talk about it and it will lose power. And I had to just basically like turn off that part of my brain that was like, don't do it. And so I just like closed my eyes and was just like, I have to share about this and I'm going to, and like just went there. And like I did kind of have my eyes closed, I think, like the whole time, which is funny because we talk about like a lot of times new people are like scared to look people in the eye. And I'm like, yeah, I've been here like almost
Oh,
10 years. And
man.
like, I'm like, it's not just, it's just vulnerability. Vulnerability is scary, and no matter who you are and what's going on. And, but after I talked about it, I felt so much better. And like once I did kind of like open my eyes and look at the ground, I could see nods of other people like going there with me and understanding, and even just people after saying, "Thank you for sharing that." And more people opened up about their issues with body image issues. And I think we even opened a open share group at that time because there were so many people who were
Yeah, we
like,
did.
"Yeah." so
Well,
so it pays off, but it is, every new thing is scary. And if I'm not being intentional, that is a part of our recovery, is like, what is currently going on? Are you talking about it?
yeah, that's so good. So the word that kept coming up to in my mind when you were talking was risk. Like, am I intentional in leaning into the risk of vulnerability for what's going on in my heart right now? Because you just said, like, the place where I was hurt the most was with other women. And now I've got to share this with a bunch of other women. Of course, that's scary. Of course, that's hard to be vulnerable. But could it be that on the other side of that risk, there's healing?
Yeah, the
And
healing of being now in a safe place with women with talking about this topic is huge. Yeah.
yeah, well, and also, as you were talking about it too, like I loved the thread of like, it's not like my, it's not like I ever grow past the need to be vulnerable because our God is so faithful that on this side of heaven, we are never going to be perfected. We are going to be flawed because it's a part of this world that we're in is we have this sin nature within us. But our God loves us so much that he's going to point out these areas of our heart that we need to yield more and more to him. And when those new areas are brought up, and you articulated it so well, is, man, am I going to let God push me? Am I going to risk being vulnerable with that? And that takes the intentionality, the predetermined decision to live my life with honesty and vulnerability. And like, we need that. Without that attitude, we're not going to grow in our recovery. Uh, and that's just, it's so good. Uh,
And we're not going to connect with the people around us that God wants us to connect with, because that's such a key part of recovery that people often don't think about, that is so intentional and designed by God, which is the community. What heals us is talking about it and having people respond well. That's what's healing, is the relational side of it. Someone to look me in the eyes and say, of course that hurts. I would be upset too. Like, thank you for sharing that. Thanks for sharing that part of your heart with me. And we all need that. And it's that does the healing. And then we can talk about it more, and then we can go there more and be more vulnerable and share with more people. And that's where the healing happens. But there is a level of intentionality to that, because we can hide. I mean, it's super easy to hide in recovery. It's super easy just to go through the motions and show up to the meetings and not go there and not share. And we have to fight against that. I have to fight against that,
you know,
and not just show up.
you saying that I have to fight against that tendency of not just showing up. There is value in just showing up. Like,
Yes.
if I
Let the
get
record
myself in the
show.
seat, like, it's important. I mean, we got to get to the building to actually, like, have any shot of getting what the Lord wants to give for us in that place. But Julia, one of the things I know we've talked about time and time again is like the importance of being willing.
Hmm.
And so, like, if there's one bucket in this conversation of intentionality, one of them is the intentionality to be vulnerable. I am going to act in a predetermined way where I'm going to choose to take the things that are in the dark and put them in the light. But then there's also like an attitude of willingness,
Hmm.
and just being willing to be open to what God wants to do. I think you know what I'm talking about in
Oh
conversations
man,
we've
I could
had.
talk about this for forever. I feel like every part of my every new area that the Lord has brought up in my life, there has been a moment of, okay, Julia, I mean, to put it in the principles, okay, you're not in denial about this anymore. You realize that there's a problem. You realize you're not God and you're powerless to fix it. The next one, the third principle, is
Well,
commit my life.
second
Oh, help
second
me. I'm saying
principle,
it
you went
wrong.
from you went from one to three. But
Okay.
yeah, there's a God and I'm not it, and I've got a problem and I can't fix it. Principle two is there is a God, and apparently I matter to him, and he does have the power to help me recover. And now
Hmm.
principle three.
Yeah, is the consciously choose to commit my life to him. So that one trips me up every time. And it really is, at least in my recovery, it has been a conscious decision. Like, I feel like there's been a wrestling with the Lord. I remember specifically dealing with body image issues and realizing I wasn't ready. Consciously thinking, I'm not ready to stop doing these things. I'm not ready to take the action
Oof.
steps that I need. Because for me in that time, it was, stop weighing yourself, stop body checking yourself. Stop, there's certain things that I was doing to quote unquote make myself feel better about what's happening internally with me. Um, that I had to commit. I had to make that conscious decision to say, okay, I'm going to stop doing those things, those action steps. And sometimes there's action steps in our recovery. Sometimes it's a heart posture. Sometimes it's both. For me, in this particular area, it was an action step of, I need to stop doing this and then deal with the emotions that hit me from not
Mm,
doing those things anymore. and wrestling with the Lord with them and sitting in that and dealing with that and trying to, and that was for me in this particular area when my recovery was able to happen, because I had to deal with the discomfort of not doing those things and what was happening for
Gosh.
me in that.
Oh, man, that's a powerful statement there. I had to become willing to deal with the discomfort that came from not doing the things that I kept running to. Whew. It the piece that I'm pulling out of this is like it's surrender. And I think what you're bringing us into, sometimes surrender feels like a real ambiguous thing. Hey, just surrender. But really, it's kind of this place where belief starts to roll into action. And like God is bringing these things to mind. Hey, I believe that I'm broken. I believe that there's a problem. I believe that you're God and I'm not it. You do have the power to help me change. And God goes, okay, now that you have that belief, let's push that into the first baby step. And I love even just the honesty that you had with yourself going, I'm not ready to let go of this. And I think sometimes we can look at ourselves in our recovery and just go, come on, man, just, what's wrong with you? Just let go of it. But like, that's actually like being willing to say, God, I want to, but I'm not ready. I'm so scared. That's actually a really vulnerable and brave thing to admit to yourself and to God. And it's a vulnerable thing to admit to others. And if we are intentional in being honest, even in being honest about something like that, I think God uses that intentionality to actually help us get ready to lean into it. Because did you find yourself in a moment admitting to somebody else? Maybe you did, maybe you didn't, but did you admit to somebody, I don't think I'm ready to do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
and
I
and
think
what did that look like?
I mean, I was in counseling at that time, and I think my counselor kind of knew. I think it was like, well, here are some things that you can do. What would it look like to do those things or to stop doing these things? And there were times even in counseling where it was easy to hide and be like, yeah, uh-huh, okay, you're right, I do need to do that. But then uh being able to like leave and kind of be faced with that, am I gonna do it? I want to do it, but am I gonna actually follow through with it or not? um and so yeah, it is it's really hard to um it's really hard to continue intentionality even whenever it does there's always going to be really strong emotional responses to things that we've been, ditches we've been in for so long. It just is. And that's hard. And I think that it's like, are we going to be honest with ourselves about that? Am I going to be honest with myself about that? And have grace to deal with strong emotions when they come up. And that's easier said than done. I understand, like, I'm talking about my body image issues, but there's some really, really deep, deep rooted roots to every issue, and that it's there is just a really strong level of kindness that has to come with recovery, because these issues are here for a reason. A lot of us have had really hard things happen to us, and we've used these things as a protection to protect ourselves. And we have to stop and give ourselves that posture to say, hey, this was survival. Give yourself grace, but it's okay now. And you're safe now. It's time to let some of that down and to step into
Mm,
healing. because now our protection has become our prison.
Mm, that's so good, Julia. Yeah, I think I remember hearing Rodney talking about how recovery is a process of us coming to realize that the old strategies we've used to move throughout life no longer work or serve us the way that they used to. And as I enter into recovery, I do so with this intention, this predetermination to act in a certain way. And that certain way is I'm going to let these old things go and understand why it's hard for me to let them go so that I can walk in new strategies that God has designed me to walk in with him and others. And it's hard. It doesn't happen by accident. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of risk. It takes us putting in the effort. I loved even you just talking about counseling. It reminds me of me and my sexual addiction. One of the things that I needed to do for my recovery is I needed to understand the enemy I was facing down. I needed to understand the nuances of my sexual addiction. I did that through books. I did that through my sponsor. I did that through listening to other guys in the Sexual Integrity Open Share group and my step study. But how are we being intentional in recognizing and trying to take the next right step forward? It's so, so key. And man, Julia, I don't know how a half hour has already gone by in this conversation,
I know.
but I love it. And I think maybe we need to circle back and do another conversation along the same vein. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you all, for those of you that are watching and listening on your device and whatever platform you're on. And we want you to know that no matter where you are in your recovery, maybe you felt like maybe your intentionality is slacked and you're just kind of going through the motions. Maybe you're on fire and you're passionate for finding healing. No matter where you are on your journey, we want you to know that we want to walk this journey with you. And so every single Friday night at Fellowship Rogers and at Fellowship Fayetteville, we have Celebrate Recovery. 7 o'clock is when our service starts, and we would love, love, love to see you there so that you know and experience the love, grace, and forgiveness of the God that changes us and heals us. Oh, thanks for spending this time with us. Julia, thank you for being here. And we'll see you next time.